If you don't plan to finish your drawings in the one drawing session, then I hope these 8 points will convince you to at least have a go at developing a habit of sitting down to start till the finish. And I don't think it matters whether you're doing a 10-minute quick sketch or a 2-hour more considered drawing. These 8 points still apply. And if you get tired of listening to them, then at least speed through to the last point, the 8th point, because I think it's a really important one. But I've left it till 8 because it does draw together some of the threads of the other points as well. Now, of course, when we start to do anything, we can be unexpectedly interrupted. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your planning, your expectation when you sit down to draw. That for what you're attempting, you have time and the energy to start it and to finish it. So the first reason why I think this is so important is because when we draw, there's actually a rhythm to our drawing. There's a tempo, there's a pace. It's almost like a musical beat. And at the start, it starts slowly, and then over time, it builds. The momentum starts to build and the speed picks up. When we start to draw, we don't necessarily have a great deal of confidence. We're still finding our way around what we're doing in this session. Regardless of how experienced we are in this session for this drawing, I'm getting my head around now what's really involved from using this reference with this pen to achieve whatever result I'm hoping to achieve. And part of the reason for this is that there's more risk at the start of a drawing. We're having to establish everything from a blank sheet of paper. We have to struggle more with proportions because we have nothing to reference from. And it's scarier just to look at because if lines and marks aren't completely right, there's nothing around them to disguise that fact. But as we start to grow our drawing from whatever place we start, as we start to establish reference points that we can use to judge where to put new marks or how to estimate new proportions, it becomes easier, so our confidence grows, which is why the speed picks up from slowly at first to a bit faster to finally much faster. If we do the second half of the drawing at a later time, then we don't have that tempo, that rhythm, because we've lost it in the 2 days, a week, 2 weeks in between our drawing sessions. Now, most of the rest of these are what I would call the second half of the drawing skills. These are things that we do in the second half of the drawing, and therefore the skills that we develop in doing them, we can't really develop those skills in the first half of the drawing. And one problem when we think we'll finish it at another time is that, of course, we don't. You've only got to go to the home of a sewer or a knitter and see how many half-finished jumpers there are, or how many only just begun projects with fabric there are, to know that it's easier to start than to finish. There's an enthusiasm, perhaps a dream of what might happen that we have at the start that can be hard to sustain, especially if a new idea or a new type of wool pops up unexpectedly. But the problem when it comes to drawing is that we don't really develop these skills in the first half, which means if we're not consistently finishing our drawings, we can't develop them. And a lot of them depend on that momentum that builds in a drawing session. And a lot of them depend on the momentum that builds in a drawing session. So even if we do come back a week or 2 weeks later to finish the drawing, we've lost the momentum which should be helping to energize or feed or direct these second half skills. The first one is that we don't learn how to hide our, let's call them mistakes, the lines and marks that we wish we hadn't put on the paper the second we put them on the paper. We don't learn that we can later on perhaps go over the top of that in a way with a line or with marks that hide it to some degree or even completely. We don't learn that we can perhaps adjust where we have to put some shade or shadow to either cover the whole line or mark or at least the worst part of it. We don't learn that we can perhaps emphasize something very close to it to draw the eye away from the whatever impact from that mistake there is. We don't learn that we might be able to introduce some surface texture to, again, camouflage to some degree whatever we don't want to be seen with that mark or those marks. And perhaps most importantly, we don't learn that these mistakes, even if we can't cover them much at all, actually often simply are not nearly so obvious, if at all, at the end. That's a really important thing to learn, because it means we don't start to panic and despair or abandon drawings that we've only just started because something isn't right. And particularly if we suffer from perfectionism, this is an incredibly important thing that we can't learn until the second half of the drawing. The third thing that we learn in the second half of the drawing is how to adjust the values. Well, not how to, but to gain the experience we get towards the end when we start to look at our drawing as a whole. Now, obviously, I can't look at my drawing as a whole in the first half. I'm still establishing what's where. I have a particular focus on proportions, on placement, on scale, which are all important focuses to have at the start. But in the second half, other things become more important. And while I'll be doing, say, some hatching in the first half to start to get a sense of values and of balance for composition and so forth, I can't start to get the final values, work out how dark the darkest darks are going to be until the second and even the final quarter of the drawing. If you watch my drawing demo videos, you'll see that often at the very last moment, I duck in with the pen and I darken a few little areas much more darkly. Because now at the end that I've seen where all the other marks are and I can see the grayscale effect I've created, I can see now whether some parts of the grayscale are just a little too bland over too much of an area, and I need to create some more distinctiveness by darkening some part carefully. And this is very different to the more generalized hatching where I'm trying to create a grayscale using a 0.2mm fine liner pen, probably with some sense of speed, which is also helpful because that creates a certain briskness, a certain energy in our line work. But at the end, it's a slow, considered process to make those final adjustments of tweaking the darkest parts in whatever way we need to really sharpen the drama of our drawing. When I talked about the tempo of a drawing earlier, I talked about the shift from the focal point to the periphery. And that's something that we only develop the skills in doing that in the second half, in terms of the periphery. But we also have the opportunity to develop the focal area as well. Just because we've started there, we shouldn't have put our final lines for all of that. Again, when we've now established the broad range of the drawing, it may well be very helpful to now emphasize the focal area, what we want to be the main thing we look at. It may or may not be in the dead center, but this is certainly something that in my opinion and experience helps to create a sense of realism, because when I look at a scene in real life, the focal point I see more sharply, more clearly, more darkly than I do the things that are at the periphery of my vision. If I draw evenly over the whole scene, in terms of my lines and my values and my detail, it's going to be much more like a photo, which doesn't necessarily bring a sense of realism with it. Now, once I've put my marks for the peripheral regions on the paper, I can't take them off. But what I can do is increase the focus, increase the ink in one way or another in the part that I want to draw the viewer's eye more immediately. And I don't get practice at this if I'm not in the second half of the drawing, and if I'm not in the second half of the drawing with the increasing momentum and understanding that I've got from the first half. As I walk around in the grass that needs to be mowed in this part of my backyard, I'm having to pay particular attention for any eastern brown snakes that we do share this lovely space with. Second most venomous snake in the world. But the fifth point is it's only if we continue our drawing throughout the whole session in one go that we get to learn, experience, develop, and know how to use the increasingly confident lines and marks that we're able to make. Because this confidence certainly comes just from the momentum of having already spent some time and concentration doing the initial planning, developing our understanding of the reference, our picture in our mind of how we want our drawing to look, our hand-eye coordination using this particular pen, and confidence in our ability to get on the paper what we want. Now, it's not just in the one drawing session we want this confidence, and we particularly want it for the looser, more gestural, less focused marks. I'm being bitten by and we particularly want it for the looser, more general, more gestural marks that we like to have at the peripheral parts of our drawing, the less focused parts. And I'm being bitten by ants as I stand here, so I'll finish this point very quickly. But there's also a long-term gain in confidence, because the confidence we develop with these second half marks is actually still a confidence that we can carry into all parts of our drawing. There is a long-term gain generally of confidence in our mark making and our line drawing that we, if you like, develop and feed and grow in the second half of the session drawings. Not the second half of the drawing, but the second half of the session, which is why we need to complete our drawings in one session, because otherwise we've lost that momentum that breeds confidence. The sixth point is fast and easy, but very important. And that's if we don't finish in one session, for all the reasons I've been talking about so far, and some of the ones I'll continue to say, the second half of the session is the fun part. We've gone through the stress, the risk, the concentration, the nerves of starting, of establishing proportions, of working out what we're going to do. We've started to build up our rhythm, our momentum, and now we get the benefit of all that and all the skills that we're learning that are so vital for how our finished drawing's going to look. Because let's face it, people don't see at the end how the drawing looked at the beginning or halfway through. They really see all the marks that we've put on in the second half. It's the fun part. It's the part where I'm thinking, I should do this more often. I should do this again. What else can I draw? And we lose that if we've lost the momentum and lost the benefits and the discoveries of the second half. The seventh reason is that we get coherence in what we're doing. Drawing is seen as a process. Now, I have broad strategies that I follow in every drawing that I do, or most drawings that I do, depending on the subject. But it's still a case of, in every particular subject, how these broad strategies, the different techniques and processes I have that I could apply, how they will be applied in this case is different in every drawing. So invariably, after I've started, I start to get ideas of things that might work that I hadn't thought of, or that perhaps I was going to do that I'm now thinking, I'm not sure that's going to work so well, or not perhaps in the way I thought, and I start to make adjustments, or I get totally new ideas of how I might do things. And our ideas, our planning in our head for our drawing is one of the things that grows in the second half, because of the momentum that builds, because of the increased understanding we gain as we draw of what we're drawing and the possibilities of how our drawing may look. And if a drawing session is, say, 30, 60, 90 minutes, then I can remember these things and focus on them as I draw. But if I stop halfway and I come back 3 weeks later, I've probably forgotten everything that was in my head that I was going to do, and I've forgotten, if you like, the feelings that were developing about what would work and what I wanted to do. And when I start again, it's almost like I'm starting a new drawing, because I've lost all of that. It's one of the momentums, I suppose, that we build up, is the thinking of and consolidating and refining in our head the ideas of how we might proceed, progress, and finish the drawing. Lose all that in the 3 weeks in between, and it's like, instead of having one finished drawing, it's almost like we've got somehow two half-finished drawings superimposed on each other. So here's the eighth point. This is the one I said, go to if you don't have time or the inclination to listen to the in-between ones. And it's this: drawing is a process. And you'll have a sense of some of the ways I understand this drawing process from the points that have gone before. But drawing is a process that starts when we choose our reference, start to think of why we want to draw it, how we might draw it, what we hope to achieve in our drawing, start to visualize how our drawing might look, how we might interpret this photo and the techniques and the materials we might use, and then starting that process physically on the paper and then developing it till we get to the end. And over time, we develop a consistent drawing strategy. Now, I don't mean consistent drawing techniques. I don't mean we're going to always draw everything in a way so that all our drawings look the same. It comes down to, though, a consistent understanding of process, which we can then apply to whatever we want to draw with whatever techniques, whatever stylistic razzmatazz, and for whatever materials and end results we're wanting. And process in a drawing is from choosing the reference to the finished drawing. One of the problems when we don't finish the drawing in one session is that we end up with a lot of half-finished drawings because it's always easier to start a new drawing. And so we don't get that learning. See, we're not just learning to do actual techniques. We're not just learning how to capture the effect of leaves or how to draw cars or how to draw faces or whatever. And it's our understanding of that process which actually drives our ability to use whatever skills and whatever drawing techniques, specific techniques such as hatching or perspective, that drives our ability to use them to achieve whatever we want to achieve. And we come to understand the process of start to finish when I do a drawing from start to finish. And I know this from my own experience because when I draw, I'm mostly drawing for YouTube drawing demos. Then I want to do my drawing from start to finish. And so my drawings are from 15 minutes in real time to 2 hours in real time, probably averaging more 30 to 40 minutes. And that's a great length of time to go through a whole process. And that's helped me understand what my drawing process is, because these answers aren't the same for all of us. We're all starting from different places. We have different prior knowledge, and we want to get to different places in our drawing. What we're trying to achieve is different. But for me to develop my understanding of what the drawing process that I'm using is, and therefore being able to use it and refine it, develop it, even change it quite deliberately, is strengthened the more times I go through the drawing process. And I've learned that from the hundreds of drawings I've done in the last couple of years, where I've sat down and gone from start to finish and had practice at the entire process. And if I don't have time to do a 90 to 120 minute drawing, I don't start one. If I don't have time to draw, I don't. If I only have time for a 15 or 20 minute drawing, I will choose a subject that I can do in the style, the technique that I want to do it in 15 to 20 minutes or whatever. So every drawing session I have maximizes my learning, my understanding, my experience in all of these things that I've talked about. And I'm sure that's part of the reason I can look back and see over the last 2.5 years since I've been drawing for YouTube, how far my skills have developed. But not just marks on the paper, but my understanding of my process, my reasoning, my big picture, all the things that now guide me in knowing how to put the marks on the paper, which of the techniques I've learned and I've got experience in to use and how to use them. They all flow from my understanding of process. And quite frankly, if we can't complete our drawings in one session, and if we haven't got the stamina to sit down for the time it takes for one session, then I'm probably drawing something that's simply beyond my abilities right now. If I can't sit down and draw for 2 hours, then I shouldn't be trying to do drawings that will take 2 hours because I'm going to have to split them. I should only go as far in one session as I have developed the concentration, the thinking, the ability to persevere with intent to achieve. If I limit my drawing sessions to what I can do in one session to get from start to finish, then I will also start to increase my drawing stamina, my ability to concentrate and to focus and to think, as well as all the skills that we get in the second half of the drawing that we don't get in the first half of the drawing, that we can't pick up with the same preparation if we don't do the second half immediately flowing on from the first half. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope this makes sense, and if this is something that you don't as a practice do, please give it a go for a while. Have a month or 2 months where you only draw what you can draw in one session and finish. And don't get up and leave it till you've finished it. And see if you don't start to pick up a momentum in what you learn and feel that, wow, I've really started to improve in my drawing much faster than I have in the past. But look, in the end, whatever you draw, however long you draw it for, however it turns out, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.